Hello and welcome to this latest episode of the Midierror Meets interview series, where we speak to all kinds of people who work in sound and music. On the show this time, we've got Robert Louis from Tru Thoughts Records, who founded Tru Thoughts Records back in 1999 with his co-founder Paul, and ever since then they've released over 260 records. On their label, they've had people like Bonobo, Quantic, Russel, Hidden Orchestra, Nostalgia 77, Hot Ace Brass Band, Rodney P, Moonchild and Flowdan. And we go into what it's like to run a record label, what sort of things you need to do, how you get sample clearances, and all that stuff which goes into running a record label in the modern day. We love doing this at Sonic State. Thank you very much for your support. You can support us on Patreon. You can also support us on YouTube by joining as a member there. And if you stick around to the end of the show, I will recommend a previous episode which I think is worth your time. But for the time being, let's get into the chat with Robert. And the first thing I asked him was about what first brought him down to Brighton.
I came down in 1989 to go to university. I actually failed my first year at uni, then I went back to London where I'd grown up. I told my mum I'm going to make it as a DJ now that I failed. I'm not going to go back to uni. My mum said, well, you better get a job. And then I realised I need to get back to uni. Back then, I came from sort of relatively poor family, so I got a full grant, top-up grant. Amazing. You know, there was housing benefit loan you could claim. You know, it was like... So then I suddenly realised, actually, if I'm going to try and make it as a DJ... should do it in Brighton, less competition, and you know I could maybe get a degree. So I rang the uni up, and they let me retake basically. So yeah, then I came back and I've been down here ever since then. So yeah,
great. And what were you studying?
I did business studies.
Oh no way! Wow,
yeah.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I think it's an amazing place, Brighton, for many reasons, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
What originally drew you here? What originally sort of
do you know
got
what
you started?
I was sort of. I didn't want to pursue getting a degree, but my mum, classic South Asian mum, who couldn't get an education because her parents could afford to give her an education, but was very clever. And when we came to the UK, my mum was like, both for me and my sister, you've got to get degrees. So part of the deal my mum did with me when I was 14, she said to me, I said to her, I want to leave school at 16 and I just want to get some money. And one of the things I said is I want to get some turntables and a mixer, and I know we can't afford to do that. And then my mum said to me, if you get into uni, I won't give you any more birthday presents or Christmas presents. And if you get into uni, I'll buy you 2 turntables. And I said, but I need a mixer and an amp and speakers. She said, well, you can figure it out, save up and get that yourself. So I got into uni and my mum bought me 2 SoundLab turntables. I had a really good friend whose dad had a hi-fi store, so he gave me a discount and I got 2 SoundLabs and I'd bought a Gemini mixer, just a general amp and speakers. So I came to Brighton Uni with, you know, turntables and a mixer, speakers in 89 and
nice,
doing house parties and things like that. So yeah, what drew me to Brighton was nothing particularly, to be honest. It was like I applied to Edinburgh to go there, which I didn't get in because my grades weren't good enough, but I qualified to get into Brighton and that's why I came down here. So I knew nothing about it.
And how did you learn to DJ? What were your influences then?
I was from a young age, because in London there was lots of pirate radio. I saw, when I was about 12 in East London, Walthamstow outside Woolworths, I saw some people break dancing and they had a boombox. And then it was a record that was cutting up Herbie Hancock Rocket. And I was so into music. And I was like, oh, what's that record? And then I'd figured out, because of the Street Sounds electro series, oh, this record's called Cutting Herbie. And then I was fascinated with the hip hop scene and DJ culture. And then Wild Style Film came out, Beat Street. There were bits on, you know, children's TV programs, The Tube. And it was like, it just looked, oh gosh, this is the future. Someone's scratching. How do they do that? What's going on? I used to go to W.H. Smith and read, it was Jocks magazine and Record Mirror. There'd sometimes be advice about how to do a DJ. And then when I was 17, I didn't have many records, but I had a few records and everybody knew I was into music. And a couple of friends decided to do a party and charge people for tickets. And they asked me to DJ and they said, we'll give you some money. And that was the first time. They just, that old school setup, mobile DJ setup. It was right. It did have pitch fade, and I just said to my friend, "No, look, can we hire it early so I can have a practice on it?" And then I've just practiced, and then I just began to learn. I didn't have turntables till I got my A levels, and then got into uni. So that was it. But I was just trying to learn. There was no internet or anything like that. You were trying to pick up bits from TV, and
That era looks so amazing because it was like a combination of sort of graffiti, breakdancing, music. There seemed to be like a whole scene that was just like fused together in that time.
And I think the good thing about it is, for people my generation, is there were no barriers to it. And also I think the good thing about it, you could be poor or you could be rich, and if you're into hip hop, come and be into hip hop. And do you want to dance? Do you want to do graffiti, or just want to enjoy yourself? It felt really welcoming. So I guess for my age group, as a child, this just felt, and it was also, piss off your parents type vibe, isn't it? It's like, that helps in something. There's a bit of swearing. It's not like, a long way away from NWA. This was like 82, 83, 84. So, it was still fairly sanitized, the odd swear word here. I listened back to some of those songs I used to listen to at 12 and 13. It was like, oh yeah, there's quite a lot of sexual references here that were just going over. And they weren't as blatant as some rap is today, but it was, 18 music really. But my mum didn't know any difference, and pirate radio in London, they would play those tunes. There wasn't a license, so you could hear it, in the early evening. So,
and that film you mentioned Wild Style. I think anyone who watches that, there's just so many samples from tracks that are in that film, isn't it? It's almost like the whole film has got sections where that have been sampled for breaks, for drum and bass, so many different types of genres. Yeah,
so just real foundation. But, I wasn't thinking like that at that time. It was just, I had just a massive passion for the music. There was something for me that was really, it just absolutely fascinated me. So, yeah.
You now run Tru Thoughts Records, which has been going for
26 years we are now.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible. So, what was the distance between those times and then did you have an idea after a few years of DJing?
Yeah. Well, what happened was I came to Brighton. So in my first year at Brighton, the year I failed, I ended up being in a house with two people who were quite into music. And I was chatting to them saying, I've got turntables. Should we try and do put on an event? And between the three of us, we put on an event in Brighton. In our first term, I think it was in November, it didn't do very well. But one of the things that happened with that was I went to a shop in the centre of Brighton, a clothes shop, and said, can I DJ here for free on a Saturday, just so I can give out flyers? And that was 89. So I was playing, the rave tunes, Summer of Love tunes, hip hop, which I was really into. I was playing, and the soul, Soul to Soul was number one in the chart. So I was playing all that music, and then the owner and the people working there all during the day, they were like, oh my God, we're so busy. We were like 3 times, 4 times busier than we normally are. And then at the end of the day, the owner came to me and said, oh, would you be up for doing this every Saturday and we'll pay you?
Amazing.
How much do you want? I was 18. So I was like, yeah, can I get £30? And then I remember one of the guys working there, he goes, you should have asked for more. But to me, £30 seemed like so much money.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did that pretty much for a year. Every Saturday, I DJ'd all day, 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. in that shop.
Wow.
Did 7 hours.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
And I think you spoke to Mr. Scruff about these kind of things where you volunteer to do something because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And, there's no it's just opportunities can come from those sort of situations where you get stuck in. But I love that you did that, man. I love that you had the idea and so soon they just took you on.
Yeah. And in hindsight, I would say to anyone listening, I should have charged 60 quid or 70 quid or something. I should have been. I was 18 though, so to me it was fine. And I think it's always getting the balance right. You especially with social media nowadays, you hear people, oh, your value. They're asking me to play. If you're not doing anything, you're gonna have to pay for free. Especially if you want to be a DJ, because everyone's a DJ today. So
yeah, absolutely. And there's Yeah, anyone could have quite easly just said way too much money, and they go, "What? Don't be stupid." And then you can kind of never come back because you've asked for like 15 grand for like just for DJing. But yeah, I think those are lessons learned, aren't they? And I think there's also a discussion you had where you talked about times where sort of lessons learned from being conned, for example. I mean, the two aren't really connected, but like there's things where like that I've had in my career and in my life where, it's bad situations, but inevitably you learn from those bad situations, don't you?
Yeah.
And even in that situation, you pitched yourself maybe a bit too low, but then they're probably more likely to welcome you with open arms in that respect. Yeah.
And I think anything in the music industry, even today, we still sometimes get it wrong. We still sometimes get it right. Even for us with sync, sometimes people come in and, what would you want for this? We're always trying to balance, right? Look, we want to go high, but we also don't want to scare them off, and you don't want to go too like, you're always worried when you quote something and then they've replied in 5 seconds, right, it's a deal, and they're like, oh no.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. I think I worked in charity shops for years, and I think when you've priced something a bit too low because you put it out and like 2 seconds later someone's buying it and you're like, shit, that was like half the price we should have done. Yeah, it applies everywhere, man. But yeah, the label's just absolutely phenomenal, like so incredible what you've managed to achieve. I believe so you launched in 99 with Paul Jonas. What can you tell me about meeting Paul and like your friendship together? I mean,
what had happened is I was doing club nights on my own in sort of through the 90s, and then they were all coming to an end around 97, 98. I was doing a night at the jazz place, which stopped. I'd done it for 7 years every Wednesday. It sort of reached the end. Mm-hmm. And then I was doing the Concord twice a month. And then the Concord was about to shut down. So I was trying to set up Tru Thoughts at that time. And then I didn't really know Paul very well, but I used to be giving out the flyers some nights. And I met Paul giving out flyers, and he came up to me and was like, Paul's quite boisterous and chatty, and it was like, I was just chatting to him about what we're doing, and I said to him, look, I'm trying to set up a label. I've got an idea to do a new night soon. This is what I want to do. And then Paul said, I'm fairly certain he offered, would you go do you want to do a night together? So in my mind, I was like, okay, he pitched it as, and then you have time to concentrate on the label. So initially, we started the night together, and Paul wasn't part of the label. I was funding the label and doing it all on my own. But Paul was helping out unofficially, but helping out within the label. So we were doing the night. I remember all my friends and family were like, Rob, you've been doing nights for 7 years and now you're giving 50% of the night that you're doing to someone else. And I was like, but I need a hand if I'm going to do a label. I need some time and I need someone to do that. And he's really good. And almost within a few weeks of working with Paul, we were booking someone to play and he was getting them on the cover of one of the local magazines. Like, to me, I'd fax it to the people, might chat with them if I see them on the street. Oh yeah, will you give it a mention this month? He went straight in and can we get them on the cover of the magazine? So I was like, all right, this is a different way of doing things. I was a bit more, you'd be humble. We've got someone really good playing. Can you mention it? And he's, no, I'm going to try and get them on the cover. So within that time when we were doing the label, that first 6 months, we put out the music. Paul was helping and we'd signed Bonobo, but very quickly, within 6 months of that going on, there was a massive buzz about Bonobo. The album was doing well. And then I said to Paul, look, let's just go 50-50 on the label. We'll do the label together now as well, officially. And then again, all my friends and family were like, what are you doing? Why are you giving, half away? But I tell everybody it's the best 50% I've ever given away in my life, because the combination of me and Paul, I'm the classic A&R label owner who could spend money like there's no tomorrow, because if an artist says, I've got the best idea in the world and I'm going to get strings on this tune, I'm like, okay, right, let's do it. We'll figure out, how, the bank account a bit later when it comes to royalty, which is why so many labels go down, because they think, we'll put this out and we'll make a ton of money and then we can pay everybody their royalties. But Paul started talking about, we need a fund in the bank account. You can't just be saying to someone, we'll give this amount, look at how much they've made. And he was forcing me to be more sensible. And Paul was also good in the sense that I could say, look, if we don't invest in this, they're not going to do the best that we can, and we're going to lose we're going to lose the artist. We're going to not be able to do something. These are the things that you need to do. So you have that conversation with Paul of balancing the real world and the creative. And he's not, in inverted commas, an accountant. He understands, right? Oh yeah, we've got to take risks. It doesn't running a record label. If you know, when you speak to proper accountants, they look at the numbers that you're spending and go, someone who's had 100,000 streams, you've given them, you know, £5,000 as an advance. What? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. And of course it doesn't make any sense, you know. So, but you have to do that if you run an independent record label. We don't have Beyonce funding all our projects. We just have to take a risk here and then and do something. But in our way, it's not huge. You know, we don't do big financial outlays at the label. We're still quite sensible.
Yeah. And I think also the fact that you're saying about giving away 50% and things like that is, but the fact that you're working with another person sometimes on a project is so useful, because it gives you way more momentum, doesn't it, than if you're working, like if you're doing everything, like if you are like putting on a night and you're setting up the PA and you're getting the artists, making sure the artists are okay. There's quite a lot of work to do. Maybe you're also doing the warm up on the night as well. There's loads to do. So I think that, yeah, in a lot of projects where you're sharing that, when you're sharing those things, you not only get supported by the person, but there's like a momentum between you that kind of, you know, moves back and forward.
Yeah. And I think, look, where I was back then, I used to, you know, I was a bit of a control freak, and it worked out for a while, but I was beginning to realise I needed to, you know, there was parts of coming out of my shell. And I think that's another thing that Paul brought to the business. It was sort of in the early days, he said to me in the early days, you know, you got to just step up and just chat a bit more, you know, to other people. Don't wait for everybody to come to you. He was sort of giving me that advice because he's like that. And equally, I would say to Paul, sometimes you just have to keep quiet, you know. And I think that combination is what you need in the music industry. You know, there's
Definitely.
The balance of those things.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we've all had either like work colleagues who kind of do something a bit strange or like a bit obviously not I don't want to use the word cool, but just helping people to kind of assimilate better, maybe. Yeah, that's great, man. I know at this point you've released something like 260 albums.
Wow.
And incredible. But you mentioned Bonobo there. So were you friends? Did you know Bonobo before you started the label?
Not at all. And I think these are those situations that, you know, at the time I was trying to launch Tru Thoughts, there was the peak of Skint Records in Brighton. So there was Fatboy Slim, huge. And then on the back of that, there were lots of other labels that were up and running. So Catskills was probably the other one. So all the people... What I knew when I wanted to start Tru Thoughts is what I'd seen is we need to just release a record every month, basically. And my idea was get sign some people, do a compilation album so it looks like, oh yeah, this is a label that's got a crew of people together, and then hopefully all the demos would start coming in. And I do. So everybody I knew who was making music, I was like, oh yeah, but you know, would you mind doing a tune for me? Would it be all right? I used to come down to the club. I used to let them in on the guest list. And they were all like, you know, I've got some music, but I want to send it to Skin. I want to send it, who were very much more established than we were at that time. And I understood that. And then literally at the last minute, I was about to put out the compilation. I'd made 4 or 5 of the tunes on there under various aliases, so it looked like we had more people signed to the label than actually existed. They weren't very good, those tunes. But just before I was about to put everything out, go, look, that's it. I've tried. I've got some music from some people. And then one of the people on the compilation, he said to me, are you still looking for some music? I said, yeah, I really am. And he goes, look, I know this guy he's doing some really good stuff and he's sending out his music, but he's not getting no one signing him. I said, oh yeah, put me in touch. I think I called him up and I said, oh, look, have you got some music? And I was living in the centre of town, and I gave him my address. I said, look, you know, just pop something. He popped a cassette through the letterbox, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it had on there pretty much what became the Animal Magic album. So one of the songs was Terrapin. I said, look, can we put this on the compilation album? I would really want to sign someone to do an album. Have you got more music? And he was like, yeah, I've got more music. I said, cool, can we just do this deal? We did an album deal and then signed. And then when we started putting out the music. I think we captured a moment. It was coming towards the end of Big B, the peak of it, and then Cy Bonobo was doing this. He was playing instruments as well as programmed, hip hop influence and all that. It wasn't the usual. Not to diss DJ Shadow, but it wasn't an instrumental loop. Here's a brilliant song and I'm going to put some drums behind it. There was musicality to what was going on, and it just seemed to capture a moment. And I think that's what, it sort of rode the wave, and he had, interest coming, and then that album did really well for us. So we had a debut album that I think within a couple of years had sold 30,000 copies, So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and you said was that under your Nairobi moniker? Did you put,
what were the name? There was one Deeds Plus Thoughts. It was called one. So many others. I can't even remember. Humble Monk was another one. Someone jokingly called me humble. Like a humble monk said to me one day, and I thought, that's a really good name. And I kept that in my mind. So okay, I'll use that as an alias for this.
It's a bit like I mean. I was in America a few years ago, and on the menu was tofu scramble. And then I was in a music shop, and there was a kid talking about, we don't have a name for our band. And I said, tofu scramble. You've got to do it. Someone's got to be called tofu scramble.
Those magic moments, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I apologise because I did know that Bonobo had sent you a tape. I don't know why I said had you been friends for a while. I have actually written tape down there. And you've worked on some tracks with him as well.
Yeah. So that was just, I think at that moment in time, he was doing really well. He'd signed to Ninja Tune, which we helped him get his deal for, and then he was DJing at the club nights we were doing, and then I just said to him, I've got some ideas for tuning you up for doing something together, just for fun, really. Let's see how it turns out. And so I went to his home studio at the time, and we just had some ideas. And obviously there's a massive level of difference between what he can do and what I can do. I was sort of sitting there, maybe do this and do that. I remember because I bought a jungle tune that sounded amazing. The break on it sounded amazing, slowed down. And he was like, no, you've got to program it. I don't want to just loop something. I'm going to program something. So his view was, and I brought this other track, and he was going, let me just program the drums on this, and he got the MPC out. So his view, my view was just quick and easy, loop, just it's fun. Don't overthink it. But he brought that like a level of higher standard, and it was great. It was a massive learning curve for me. I think at that point I was still thinking, maybe I could make music, maybe I'll be good at making music, and that was the point. From the label and that artistic thing inside me is like, I'm never going to be as good as these people. I'm running a label. I can have some fun, which we did do with that. And I did a project with TM Duke as well, it's a fun project, but I haven't got that ability that those artists at that level have. And, I don't want to, I'm not going to go down that route. My ability isn't there. I think maybe if those songs had done fantastically well, maybe, of course they didn't. Because one was a, South Asian broken beat tune. It's very, very specialist, the music that I like and want to make. It's like, yeah,
that was Me and You did with TMG. Yeah. I think it is important to recognise the mastery sometimes.
Yes.
The real genuine artistic mastery that some people have.
Yeah.
And it's fine to kind of mess around. We've all got bits of music here and there, but I like that you recognise that in working with him there was some sort of extra level here going on.
And also I think it's something I've understood over the years. I know James Lavelle can get a lot of stick of something, you're not involved, but also what I've realised looking back is even when I was James Lavelle is doing a project with DJ Shadow and saying, look, I'm going to bring the guy from Radiohead. I'm not able to do that and go, I'm going to get... So I think sometimes when a lot of brilliant musical partnerships are people who are good at networking and I'm going to get this vocalist in, you're the genius music producer. I think Frankie Knuckles was that person, wasn't he? He's done amazing records, but worked with people who were possibly bringing the musicality and doing a lot of that part of stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think what I realised is like, especially for me at that point, I'm working with Bonobo and Quantic, and it's like the ideas that they are doing and what's going on. It's like it's super visionary. It's pushing against everything that's going on, but also embracing everything that's going on. And as an independent label, it's like that's that perfect match. I'm more, you know, you never saying to someone, "Oh, this is the latest crossover tune. Make music like that." So I can. I'd love a house with a swimming pool, but my gut feeling also is, have you heard this record? This 18-year-old's made. It's amazing, and it's, you know, 1,000 people like it. That's the bit, I think. So yeah.
And what sort of stuff? What sort of stuff do you enjoy making music with, or have you used over the years in terms of like equipment, gear, things like that?
In the early days, so the Tru Thoughts stuff, all of that was made on an Atari. I had an Akai sampler. I was rubbish, like technically engineering. I had a flatmate who had the same equipment, which is why I used that. And then I was always getting him to come in and be like, can you just show me how? But I wasn't great at doing it. And he was a good friend, but even he'd be like, you're a bit shit at this, Rob. I want to go and do my own music. It's like, because he was realising you just want me to engineer. You don't want to really learn this stuff, which is, you know, I think you need that. But you need, you know, Bonobo is a fantastic engineer, Quantic, TM Duke, Ben Nostalgia, all these people I know and work with, they're engineers as well as producers and musicians and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the manual for an Akai S3000 is like that. Yeah. And it's just English. It's not like multiple languages. It's like, it's so deep. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, even in more recent years, you know, when Logic came through, Quantic, I mean, brilliant for me. That my lesson on Logic in the early days, Quantic came and taught me how to use Logic, and I'd seen Bonobo use it, TM Duke use it, so I had an idea, but he came around my house, showed it to me, and then I remember I kept calling him up and going, oh, how'd you do this, what's going on? And he was patient for a little while, and then at one moment he said, Rob, you've just got to get into it. It's hard, but not that hard. I'm not your personal, you know, and he said it because I get on fantastic well. He said it in a very nice way, but he was also, look, I've sat with you for, you know, for quite a few hours, and particularly Will at that time, it's like I could be making 2 tunes in that time, but he sat with me, he did it. So I think I'm relatively all right at Logic nowadays. You know, I do a few edits and have a bit of fun doing a bit of music and stuff like that on it, but that's it. It's often just for me to play out my DJ sets. There's nothing more than that. And sometimes with those edits, I'll send them to a few DJs, like people like Gilles Peterson have played stuff recently, and Mr. Scruff, and that's fun. It's like I've taken this record that was there and brought it to a different space, and then some of, you know, my people who I look up to as DJs are playing those versions. So it's just fun. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, I listened to a few of the edits, and Rumble, the Skillex, Flowdan, and Fred Again, like your VIP version of that. I was listening to that going, fuck, I think that's like the coolest thing I've ever heard, man.
Even, I mean, when I first heard it, probably like everyone else, when it went viral online, and then I remember calling up Flowdan and it's like, can I get a copy? And he's like, no, we can't let this out, yeah. And then it came out, and then as soon as it came out, I called him up and said, because he'd done a dub plate for me before, said, can I get a dub plate? And they were like, him and his manager was like, look, we've promised it to Rodigan as an exclusive, so no one's getting a dub plate. But after a little while, I'd heard Rodigan play it a few times, and then I said, oh, you know, is there a chance? And then they did me. So I was the second person to get a dub plate for that after Rodigan. But even Flowdan called me up, and he's like, you know, this is better than Rodigan's, this one that I've done for you as well. So
good, man. It's so good. Is it Nairobi? I just thinking of people who can go and find it now. Oh, it's in one of your mix. It's on one of your Untold radio shows,
because I've done a few blends with the voice. So there's a few different versions of it out there. I've done one over like a almost dubstep reggae tune. There's one on a broken beat tune. So yeah, I just have fun because, you know, you've got a big tune. Like even my son loves that record, so he thinks it's funny that I get a shout out, and with all the dub plates I always get a shout out to my 2 children, so he shouted out at the beginning of it as well.
Oh,
so.
Wow, that's so nice, man. That's so nice. Yeah, I was listening to the Untold playback, and I knew the tune that was coming in. And then, yeah, I heard the shout out. I was like, wow, that is so impressive. Oh, man, that's nuts. You've also done Tina Turner, Unfinished Sympathy.
Oh, yeah. Again, that was just to play out for myself, really, just a different version of it. So, yeah.
You mentioned James Lavelle earlier. And, and speaking of him kind of being like an A&R guy and getting Tom York in to do Rabbit in the Headlights on science fiction. That whole album of science fiction is like just littered with like prime music talent from Richard Ashcroft's on there. Mike D from the Beastie Boys is on there. I mean, what an amazing album.
It's levels, really, isn't it, to get all that going on? So.
On one album? Yeah. I mean, there's more. There's people I haven't mentioned there, but yeah, what a stroke of genius to pull all those people together. And I think the timing of it all must have just been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, for me, Mo Wax has just been a big influence on Tru Thoughts. I think what James did as an A&R, and I was just a DJ at that point, but it was like, I think there's a scene that we're sort of involved in that sort of continues to evolve and has different genres attached to it, but it's very eclectic. But I think it was relatively insular. It used to be, soul, jazz, funk, and maybe a house remix. But when James came in and was like, I'm going to get jungle and techno people to reinterpret these tunes, it suddenly brought a different viewpoint, because I used to think, I remember even in the 90s, techno's not my thing, and then suddenly he's getting Richie Hawtin and Carl Craig to, and I could listen to their music and like it, but I was like, oh yeah, so this is beginning to fit in. He was just seeing, I think, a vision that maybe a lot of people weren't at the time, basically. And particularly with jungle and drum and bass, he really brought that to that scene that was, maybe a bit safe and still. And he was like, yeah, this needs to be, we need to be listening to this music. Look what they're doing. And also, Ronnie Sides, they're sampling jazz records and funk records. So yeah.
I have to say that the Uncle Do Androids Dream of Electronic Beats, the 3 mixes of those are just some of the best stuff of all time. Amazing mixes. But we also mentioned your radio show there, the Untold radio show. Unfold, sorry. That's Burial, isn't it? Untold. Anyway, Unfold. When did you start doing that?
Gosh, so that may be probably over 20 years ago now. So it used to be on Juice in Brighton, which was, I guess, the more mainstream station. When the label started doing well, there was a company that owned lots of bars and clubs in Brighton, and they approached us and said, we really like what you're doing. Is there anything that we could help with? And we were quite self-sufficient. And when Paul spoke to me, I said, I can't get on radio. I've been trying to get on radio since the early 90s in Brighton and could never get on Juice or any of the stations and get a regular show. So we said that to the company, and they said, look, if we took out and sponsored the show, would you be able to get on there? And we said, yeah, we think so. So we approached Juice and said, we've got a sponsor, can we get a show? And they were like, cool, what do you want? And we're like, we want Sunday, I think 6 till 9 it was. So we got for our music, they were like, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you can't touch, but we don't care what goes on at the weekends, pretty much. That's how it works. So that was the introduction to getting on the radio, basically. And then through various incarnations, it's now on 1BTM, but we see, because of the world of Mixcloud and Soundcloud, really a radio show is worldwide, and immediately you put it up online, basically, and that's what we can see goes on with the show. We get feedback from all across the world from the show. So
and it's available on so many platforms, like you say. People can listen back to so many amazing shows. And I just love the vibe of it. It's so. Did you have like an ethos for the label in the beginning? Did you have like a manifesto or anything like that?
What had happened before I did Tru Thoughts? I had done a record label with my best friend, who I'd known since I was 13. I'm still very good friends with him. I'm off to see Stuart Lee with him in a couple of weeks' time in Brighton. So,
great! Yeah,
but what happened with that is there was a massive learning curve, and I made so many mistakes with that label. So we had at the time I used to book Norman Cook through the 90s, pre-Fatboy Slim, when he wasn't huge, to play at my nights. Then Fatboy Slim started getting bigger and bigger, but I was still able to book Norman to play at my nights. And then Norman's sound started to change, and it maybe wasn't quite reflecting where I was. But just before that bit, on that previous label, I'd put out a tune which I'd done with my friend, and Norman called me up and said, I'm playing it at the wrong speed, 45 -8, but I'd love to do a remix of it. And I said to Norman, I haven't got any money, I can't pay you, because he'd just done Wiltshire, Renegade Master, and I think Corner Shop was about to drop. I knew it had been done because I'd got a promo off it, but it wasn't the Corner Shop remix they'd done that was number one. It was when it was still just, they'd done 500 promos off it. It was just meant to be a DJ track. So I knew he'd done that. And I was like, I don't have any money. He goes, no, I'll just do it for free. Just sort me out an acetate off it when it's cut. So he did that remix, and then we put it out, and then we got really conned with the remix. It was a massive learning curve how the music industry works. We had this, where Fatboy Slim was very big, and I remember bumping into Damon. I said, I've sent it to Pete Tong and Mary Ann Hobbs, and they're not playing it. Why not? And Damon said, how did you send it? I said, well, I got their address and put it in the post. And Damon was like, you really got to use pluggers, because with someone like Fatboy Slim, it's so big and they get sent so much music, they may not even get to them. But I'm like, well, it's Fatboy Slim, they're paying it. Damon was trying to explain to me, it doesn't really work like that. The music industry doesn't work like that. So, definitely didn't back then.
Yeah.
Whereas I was like, well, if you pay Fatboy Slim all the time, here's a remix he's done. Norman was doing a lot of remixes, but not enough that you wouldn't be able to play it. But that was a huge learning curve for me, I think. That was an understanding curve. So when it came to Tru Thoughts, all of that went really wrong. But what happened is we sold an advert to Japan, got really conned on that advert. I sold it for £10,000, should have really sold it for £100,000 plus.
Wow.
But what it did is it cleared all of the debts of that label. And then I said to my friend, look, he just said, I've had enough of the music industry. He goes, you love the music and you can deal with all the bullshit, but I'm not like that. I don't like the music as much as you do, and I just don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, cool, let's just stop this label. I'm going to do my thing. And I asked to borrow his share to set up Tru Thoughts. So I used that money to, press up the compilation and get things going, basically.
Right. Oh, so you had like a good foundation.
Yeah. It wasn't a huge amount of money. I think it was about 5,000 altogether. But what I realised through all of that in that sort of 2-year period is like, what do I want? What music do I want to do? So there's definitely big love to Norman. Even when we sold that to the advert, I called up Norman and said, look, we're signing this to an advert. I'll get some money to you when it comes through. Norman said to me, I've got enough money. Don't worry, you keep it. So even that was nice. Like, oh, wow, okay. But what I'd learned is I'm going to do this label, and if it fails, it's going to fail just on the music that I understand that I want to do. Let it fail in that way, basically. And I think that's the bit that's always kept the label going. Is we've had opportunities, to sign people who are gigging loads, selling loads, and then I listen to the music and I'm like, it could fit in with Tru Thoughts, but there's also this person making this jazz record here, and I love this record. I'd rather see if we can get that person up there rather than, which I'm not, it's just not quite right. For Tru Thoughts, I might play a record track of the album on the radio show or a couple of tunes, but it's not quite sitting right for me. And I think that passion in my heart. And I think over the years, we've done things with some of the artists. We had one artist in particular who went in a slightly different direction after quite a few albums with us, and I said, look, I don't think this is for us. I'm not really connecting with this music. I don't think. And he just said, look, I'd love for you to release it. Can we just see what goes on? And because he'd done so much music, we were like, yeah, let's see what goes on. And I think I really learned from that. It ticked over and it was okay, but that passion wasn't there for me when it came out. Yeah. And that's what you want. I love it now because on release days, I'm like, brilliant. I try every release day. I'm going to listen to the album in full, be excited to listen to it because it's out there now. It's not me hearing the demo. I'm listening to it like everybody else, and I can listen to it with a different headspace. So that sort of internal fan mentality, I still try and keep within what we do at the label. So, yeah.
That's amazing, man. That's a really good. It's a great way of working, and I imagine there's a fine line to balance sometimes with guiding the output of your artists, and also a fine line from them that they want to forge their own path as well.
Yeah. And Quantic is probably the main artist that showed that to it, particularly when he got into the cumbia stuff, because that was accordion music. And when I grew up in family parties, one of my uncles used to bring the accordion out. He was terrible at playing it. He used to do my head in. I had this I do not like the accordion. And then I remember, we all moved to Colombia. We booked him to do a gig. He was staying over at mine. And then at 9 a.m, I just heard accordion playing. He was staying downstairs in my house. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I came down and I'm like, Will, oh yeah, cumbia. And I'm like, cumbia, and then he was like, I'm going to do an album like this, and I'm like, what? And then he was explaining to me, and it's like, and then he made me understand. He's like, the next time he came, he bought me a ton of records. He was really explaining the cultural thing, and then he was like, I've got this idea to fuse it with reggae and dub, and I was like, okay, cool. And then for me, I almost don't like to A&R too heavily. I like the artists try and convince me why I should be putting out, and will convince me to put out accordion music. If you told me, 2 years into Tru Thoughts, we'll be putting out an album from Quantic with him playing an accordion, I'd be like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense, So.
Yeah, the accordion is, it's kind of like a breath. It's got like a breathing quality to it, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've found love for the accordion now, because of that. So, yeah.
A friend of mine's got an accordion, and it's like his grandma's accordion. And he's been making sort of really dirty, nasty, heavy, sort of bug style, really dark music, but he's using the accordion in there as well. And
in a club, the frequencies of it sound special, don't they, as well? So,
yeah. And it was just nuts. We were talking about it. He was like, oh, this used to be my grandma's. I was like, wow, your sort of grandma's still in there, in the music with him. Can you... I'm going to maybe ask some stupid questions a little bit. I don't mind asking stupid questions. I'm not scared of it. But can you describe, like, what does an A&R person do? Or, like, how you would describe what you do?
Yeah,
Tru Thoughts.
I think there are sort of different variations of A&R people. I can definitely see within the major label system at the moment that they're having to A&R in a way that's very different to what indies do. But for Tru Thoughts, I personally see my job as, even in the early days, I used to always say to all the artists, I don't want to be Berry Gordy, where he doesn't want to put out Marvin Gaye, what's going on. He's not understanding what's going on. And I was always vocal with the artists, is you've got to tell me what you're doing musically and explain to me if I don't understand. If I don't get a song and I'm saying it shouldn't be on there, then you've got to explain to me. So I think my personal skill as an A&R is I'm good at picking up on artists who have got a vision, and that vision sort of, there's definitely a lane where I'm in and there's a lane where they're in, and then we overlap. And for me, I don't need to, I don't need it to be exactly the same. I like, okay, we're going on curveballs here within that journey. I really embrace that with artists. Literally every artist we sign, and as we're discussing signing them, I say, don't make a record for me or for Tru Thoughts. Just don't make a record. I don't want that. I want your record. I want your record. So my view on A&R is be supportive. There's some artists who maybe need more support than others. Some, look, I'm trying to get a vocalist. I don't know who to get. Can you give some suggestions? And that type of stuff we'll try and do. But if they're looking for me to be the James Lavelle role of, like, I really, love Flowdan, can you convince Flowdan to be on my tune? I can't do that. I can send the beat to Flowdan, and if he likes it, he might want to go on it. But what you need to do is go and see a gig with Flowdan and go and chat to him, but be that. And I think that's the balance that I'm not full on like James Lavelle used to be, but what we are as an A&R is we can be this real, sort of hopefully a comfy base for an artist to be, look, this is where I'm going creatively, and then get that balance right between, well, what do you need budget wise to do this? What can we do? If you're making Ben Nostalgia 77 is probably that prime example. We were initially releasing in the 2000s, at the time you could release 7 inches and sell 1,000 or a couple of thousand, even 7 inches, which was this sort of beats with a bit of musicality aimed at the dance floor to listen to. It was a really good market. And the jazz scene wasn't great in the UK, and particularly for UK jazz around that time. And then Ben had done a couple of those 7 inches which had flown out and done really well. And then he turned around to me and said, Rob, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to make a jazz record. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's see. What do you need? And Ben was like, yeah, I'm going to call it Songs for My Funeral. It's going to be really down tempo. It was like literally the opposite. But to me, it was like, oh, no one's doing this at the moment. And to me, that wasn't my idea. That came from Ben. But, I can come to Paul and say, look, he's going to flip it over. But I think we should, let's push jazz now. Acid jazz has become a dirty word, but jazz is still good. The influence is there. So I think that supportive space is what we want to do. But also, and sometimes it's those journeys, and sometimes we can only take it so far. Sometimes we've had that with artists. Look, we like what you're doing, but if we've done 2 or 3 albums that are like this, and you're not going in a different direction, and it's just ticking over, there's probably not much more that we can do. I think particularly having been going so long, I definitely feel which we have to do is so important for us in the current climate of the world. It's so difficult for new artists. We have to have space to sign new artists and say, look, we're going to give you a team and an office that has 10 people there, and you've never released music before, you don't have any social media, but I believe in you as an artist, we'll give you a shot. We'll see what happens. I think still for us as a label, we've got to do that because those opportunities are few and far between for us. And look, you can go so far self-releasing, which we understand, but really in the music industry, if you're trying to take it up a level, you need a team behind you, basically. And I still feel for us it's important to take that risk. I used to wonder why nobody signed Bonobo when we signed him. Today, I understand I'm probably turning down the equivalent of Bonobo, somebody who's sending a brilliant demo, but it's like, yeah, you maybe need to improve your engineering. You maybe, there's some really good ideas, but maybe not fully developed. But what we were able to do was put that music out and let Bonobo develop in the real world and capture a moment, So I've got that understanding that, look, we can't quite always from the ground, too much development, but we can definitely, which we do is sign people who are very new, not much experience of doing music, and that's part of it. But we are a business. We've also got to make sure that we're signing people who are, I'm looking to headline We Out Here one day. That's what I'd like to do, or headline Love Supreme one day. That's their goal. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are no formulas, right? It's like, it's the music industry. Like, there's kind of no formulas for.
Nah, I think there's so much luck involved. There's so much, the right place and the right time. That's it. There is that, but I think for artists, they also make their own luck. I don't think it's any coincidence that when Bonobo did well and Quantic did well, they were so hardworking. They were getting on the phone to promoters to push their gigs. They were just working really hard to push their music out there. And of course, their albums did very well, and we've worked with artists who are brilliant and they can do it to an extent, but maybe not as much as Quantic could do or Bonobo could do. And of course, their albums may have ticked over, but they didn't reach that level because that's the reality of the music industry. But yeah, there's a lot of luck, I think, involved. But you make your own luck as well.
Definitely. and taking opportunities when they come at the right time. That's also a kind of a skill, isn't it? Seeing the opportunity.
Leverage those,
Yeah, you mentioned Love Supreme Festival, which is fantastic, isn't it? Just outside of Brighton. I remember visiting there. I went a few years ago and I saw Esperanza Spalding play.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know what I've just seen, but it was amazing. It was amazing. It was like theatre. It was like sort of 70s space themed theatre, but it was just this amazingly charismatic bass player. Saint Germain played that year as well. It's a great festival.
Yeah.
Kind of really. Yeah, huge names that they get to play there,
and I love what they do there, and I think it's sort of in our world as well. And thankfully with them, they've booked a lot of our artists over the years, and we tend to finish off the Sunday night. They give us a tent to round off that the club sort of session in their tent on the Sunday. It's I've got a lot of love for the Love Supreme. So yeah,
and I noticed you talked in other interviews about sort of multi-genre DJing, and you've talked about a lot of the different genres that you kind of that you kind of enjoy. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for those multi-genre DJ sets. I, for one, don't particularly like. I can't really listen to drum and bass for like 8 hours in a club anymore. I love the multi-genre thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, where do you take influences from for that, and how much does that connect also to maybe travel abroad and finding new things?
Yeah, I think it's just. I think it's having an open-mindedness. I think probably one of the things for me at a very young age, because at the start of the podcast when I was saying I was this hip-hop fanatic, I was so seriously into hip-hop. I was the kid at school that was like, why are you listening to this pop record or only these pop records? Listen to hip-hop, it's the best music, it's the best music. I was almost evangelical about it at 30 as a teenager, and then I remember at about 16 so nothing's better, and I liked other types of music as well. I genuinely liked it, but I thought this is the best music ever. And then a friend of mine, my friend who was teaching me how to use the Akai and got annoyed with me with that when he realised I didn't really want to learn, I went to school with him, and around 16 or 17 he said to me, Rob, you got to listen to Gilles Peterson and Patrick Forge and Norman Jay, listen to their radio shows, because they're playing all the samples from all the songs. And you sort of knew, oh yeah, it's James Brown sample and this, that. And then it was suddenly this revelation of like, oh, right, this is all, there's a real connection with, it's hip hop is taking all these bits. And I sort of knew that, but when it was presented with, and probably at that moment in time, I was like, I'm still not sure about jazz. I sort of like it, but it feels a bit safe. And then you're suddenly realising, oh, right. And especially for a tribe, with a Tribe Called Quest, and there was a record label, Wild Pitch, at the moment. There was, in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, they had quite a few jazz samples. Large Professor and Main Source were sampling jazz tunes on there and programmed them in a, interesting way. And it was like, this is how this works. So to me, that was this revelation. Oh, I want to know how all of this music connects. And then Gilles Peterson was teaching me in one way, and then listening to Norman Jay was teaching in another way. And then I liked the dance club stuff, and I liked Shut Up and Dance. I was like, okay, they're sampling Prince, but then they're sampling a dancehall tune. I have got no idea who that is, but it's, there's something going on, and there's a dub tune, and then in years later you find out, oh, this is this dub tune. It's like, and that fusion of like, oh, you just piece it all together. And I think that was the thing when I started DJing. I started DJing in Brighton because I was playing at club sets in bars, and they were asking me to play more house music. It was the early 90s, play more house, because I was playing house, but I was playing reggae, soul, jazz, funk in it, and I would do it in sections, but they kept asking me to play more house. Me being me, I was a bit this is what I'm doing, even though I was a kid. And then they sacked me, obviously. And then that's why I started my night. But my night was, I learned at my first night that I did that Wednesday night how to begin to program sets. I remember the first couple of nights that I did, had it rocking, and then it finished at 2, at 1:15, I put in a tune, I can't remember what it was, and then everybody left, and it was like, oh, what have I done there? So I was learning how to do multi-genre sets. It's very difficult to do to do it well. And then I got it really well together. But then when jungle came in and I started introducing to jungle, we literally, half the club would leave, and then I'd have people coming up to me going, no, I really like it, keep playing it. And then I'd bump into people in the street saying, why are you playing jungle? It doesn't really fit with what's going on. And I'm like, and that was the Ronnie Size tunes. I was like, it's sampling Roy Ayers, and it's a break beat. You like hip hop, don't you? And look at it. And I was trying to explain, but it was like, oh, you have to figure out a way. And then at that time, thankfully, I was booking Mr. Scruff, and then he came down and I said, are you playing jungle? And he goes, yeah. I said, people are walking out at the moment when I'm doing. I was still trying to do it. And then Andy, he played a reggae tune, which was big at our club night. And then he mixed into it a Ronnie Size tune. So the reggae thing was going, then he was, and then everybody was like, yeah, like that. And it's like, and then I copied that, for the next few months. That was my intro to playing. And I think that's the bit with multi-genre. You need, I'm pretty good DJ. I've figured out lots of transitions and ways like that, but sometimes you need a scruff, or I've seen Norman J do that over the years as well, how he used to switch between styles, and you've made that connection in a way that someone who might say they don't really like hip hop is now suddenly dancing to a hip hop record, so yeah.
Yeah, that your interview with Mr. Scruff is like a masterclass in how to do those kind of things, from every element of putting a night on. It's your knowledge that you're sharing there, as well as the knowledge that Mr. Scruff is sharing. It's just the level of thought and detail that goes into the art form of DJing is really on another level there.
And I think particularly with Andy, Mr. Scruff, even for me, I mean, I've known him very well personally over the years, and I get so much information and seen, so many of his DJs. But even that interview for me was like, I didn't even know those extra levels that he was doing that go on, and it was like, oh, right. And it's brilliant because I said to him, I get, obviously over the years, I've had so many people asking, what advice would you give for mentoring? And I said to Andy when I was doing these things, I just want to send someone, would you do this? Because I want to be able to tell people, listen to this. And now when people ask me, I'll say, look, if you're really serious about DJing, listen to this all the way through. You're not going to get 2 minutes how to DJ.
Yeah.
Listen to, but also understand you might not be at the level that Mr. Charles, don't let that put you off, but that's the level to try and know what's going on.
Yeah, if you can get like some of the way there, you'll be a fucking great DJ.
I think you get 25%, you're probably going to be doing all right as a DJ,
Yeah. Like, I mean, just off the top of my head, the way he said in the beginning of the night to put a smile on the EQ. So there's a mid-range space for everyone to have a chat in the beginning of the night.
Yeah.
I do remember pulling down mid-range a little bit so people could chat at like a house party or something, because you don't just want it to be crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's probably like half an hour talking about volumes of the records. It's so amazing, like the detail that he's going to, and the classification of, I've got this bundle of tunes that are all about weather. These are all about sunny days.
Yeah, the weather one was the one I was like, oh, right.
Yeah, crazy. And places, like, he says, like, have I got records about Aberdeen? Yeah. And then when I go to Aberdeen, I'll play some of the records and I see. And then that the mixing one you mentioned where, like maybe putting a jungle tune in, where he's talking about if a track's in like 6/8 time, you can mix it, a jungle track or something, you can mix it with a 120 BPM house track. Like, wow, okay, that is nuts.
And I'm aspirational still as a DJ, but even every time I see Andy play, I'm like, yeah, this is just, it's masterful what he can do. But I think for anybody who wants to be a DJ, I think that's the bit you've always got to do. You've got to look up to those people, but also think there's a handful of, there are Larry Levans and there's Mr. Scruffs and there's people who are just elite level when it comes to DJing, but also it is part of having fun. And I think that's the one good thing. I remember the first time I booked Norman J, who was mixing between funk, soul, hip hop, beat mixing. I was 19 and I booked him to play at night. I was 19 or 20 in Brighton. And I did, it was my night, so I did the warm-up for him, and he was there early and he heard me play. And then at the end of the night, it's like, oh, gosh, your mixing is amazing. I'm nowhere near that level. I was just in my early 20s, just sort of almost letting it out, And he goes, no, Rob, your selections are really good. You're picking tunes, you're programming them very well. That's the bit. You've got to do that. The other bit you can work on and do all of that stuff. Like, you need to hear elders and people say that to you to understand, like, oh yeah, it's not just about technical skills. Sometimes I've seen it with Andy Scruff. He will stop a record and then leave a gap and then play a record and everybody will go nuts. It's not like 6/8 into a house there, but I've seen him mix, what? You're going from that to that. It's like, how are you even doing it?
Oh yeah, you mentioned Gilles Peterson as well. That must have been, you were Label of the Year for Gilles Peterson 2005.
Yeah.
How did that feel, man?
For me, that was absolutely amazing because I'm such a huge fan of his, and I used to listen to his show when I was young religiously. I remember at that moment of understanding there's more about jazz, going to Dingwalls, being a little bit worried. I think I was only 16 or 17. Will I get worried about, I was an Asian kid, so I looked a lot older because I was already shaving very young. So, but even worried about getting in, things like that. And then, just how much music he's put me onto. I remember at the time, I have to say, I was feeling, look, we've had a good year, and I knew Gilles used to do that thing, but there was part of me like, maybe we might be in a chance this year. We maybe could get it. And then someone involved with the presentation, they called me up and said, look, you've won something. I'm not allowed to say what it was. Can you be there on the day to come down? I was like, yeah. And then I remember going into a record shop in London, and he said, you going to the awards? And I'm like, yeah, they told me to come down. He goes, yeah, you've definitely won Label of the Year, haven't you? And I'm like, well, have you heard anything? He goes, oh, no, what you've done this year has been amazing, isn't it? And it was like, he was just talking so matter-of-factly. It's like, okay, maybe. But I still didn't, even on the night, I was still, they were all a bit like, you hear what's going on. And then when we arrived, they said, yeah, look, it's Label, don't say anything to anyone, come backstage before, just before. And I asked the artists were there. I said to the artist, come on stage with me, because obviously it's my record label, but it's nothing without the artists. So they all came on. I was so nervous speaking in Coco, it was as well, in front of all of those people. I don't speak on the mic, even today as a DJ. So suddenly, you get past the mic and it's Gilles. But it was like, it was an amazing for me.
It's an incredible achievement, man. He's got such an amazing talent for, finding new music and discovering music and sharing music from around the world.
And just huge. Very generous. I mean, even when you look, even at that time with the Worldwide Awards, it must have just cost so much money to put on. And, even with We Out Here Festival with Gilles, he pushes everything. The first We Out Here Festival, when it was going on, they probably hadn't sold as many tickets as they needed to. And I remember I was watching the band play, and it was really amazing, and the vibe was really nice there, but you could see it was maybe a bit thin on the ground with the amount of people for the amount of artists they had booked there. And then I was just watching the audience, and I saw Gilles walking up, and he came over and he's just chatting, how are you enjoying us? Like, it's really good. And then he looked at me, he goes, what are you thinking about the festival? He goes, I said, Gilles, I don't know what the finances are and what's going on here, because I was just thought I'm going to bring it to business. I said, it's so important if you can keep this going. I said, the amount of people that I've met here, I said, it's a really good energy and a vibe. And I said, look, I was chatting with this DJ Kirilis, who's now quite well known, and he was just a kid. And then he came up to me and was chatting a bit. And I knew then, I was just like, you're going to send us, so this will be the sparks for another generation to come through. And at that moment in time with festivals, what they were booking, it wasn't, Gilles is booking, you've done a great album, I'm not looking at your social media followers, I'm going to book you to play a headline slot at my festival. And I knew that was what was going on. And I said that to him, and he was like, yeah, I know. It's like, I feel I need to do this, don't I? And it's like, yeah. And I think obviously Gilles was going around chatting to people and asking, but it felt important. And it's like, these things are the bits for the music scene that we're involved in. In a way, it doesn't have a name. It embraces jungle and techno and soul and folk, but it brings it all together. So people might be coming to see Ezra Collective, but they'll leave thinking, I quite like Tim Reaper and the new generation of jungle DJs, or I love Broken Beat because I've heard Jam Supernova play. It's like that bit. So I think Gilles is so important. I mean, and we saw that when we won the award. My DJ bookings pretty much quadrupled after we won. So yeah.
Nice, man. No, and you'd been running the label roughly 6 years at that point.
Yeah, 5-6 years. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know roughly how many albums you'd put out by then, or like, had you felt that year that you'd had a particularly great year? Were you feeling?
I did feel that. I think because I'm so nerdy about music, so even from maybe around early teenage, 12, 13, seeing what goes on with hip hop, and I've been through seeing acid jazz and trip hop and big beat, and you see these scenes, they come, they might go under, they might then carry on, all of these things. I've seen all of those things. But I think at that moment in time, I think what we had done, we were probably a bit disruptors. We'd come through with the new generation like Gilles and, what he'd done with Talking Loud, and they'd all done this thing, but we were the next generation that had come through. We've seen what you've done, and now we're going to just do our little twist on it. Our generation, this younger generation, is going to do their version of that, basically. And I remember even like 10 years ago, we were trying to sign somebody, really brilliant jazz artist, but slightly avant-garde. And then he went to sign to another label that was new and upcoming, that was a real buzz about them. And he said to us, look, I really like you, but I just sort of feel this other label's a bit like a disruptor. And I was like, yeah, that's what we used to be. We used to be the disruptor. And I said, it's so annoying. I said, I'm glad you're going there, because we needed people to come to us to be like, I know this label's more established, but I think what you're doing here is the next thing that's going on. And I think that cycle is so important in the music. It doesn't mean it's over with. I think that's what you can see with somebody like Gilles Peterson. He's continued to do Brownswood today, his that label, and he's continued to do labels, continued to push the music. So
yeah. And I suppose do you feel like you have to be evolving as a label?
Yeah.
Like how has your approach changed since like that time?
There's almost what I've seen with club nights, which I used to do before doing the label. There's almost feels like, or club scenes, there's like maybe a 6-7 year peak thing. So if dubstep comes in, you could have 5 or 6 years of it being like, everybody, I'm into dubstep. And then obviously the next thing comes through, and then there are people who carry on, I'm into I call it 140 now, or it evolves into something. It's the roots is there. And I think what we realised with the label, and I think that almost happened in that around maybe the 2008, was it 2009? Quantic had said, look, I don't want to do Quantic Soul Orchestra anymore. It doesn't feel, there's nowhere further I can go with funk or soul. We'd done Hot 8 Brass Band, which had done really well for us. I think any brass band who wanted to be signed to a label had sent their demo to Tru Thoughts. I was literally inundated with brass band demos, but we've got like an authentic New Orleans brass band signed to the label with a massive, in inverted commas, for an India hit record with Sexual Healing. We're not really looking for any more brass band. And then I was trying to sign something with, because Quantic he wasn't doing the electronic side of music anymore. He'd moved to Columbia. He was in a different headspace. And Will was making that electronic based music, dance music for us. And they're like, okay, this isn't maybe coming in the way that I wanted, that I needed on the label. But then when I was approaching people about, would you be up? And they're like, you're a sort of soul, jazz, funk label, aren't you? And I'm like, well, no, Quantic, has done this, but he does Quantic Soul Orchestra, and that's soul jazz. Like, yeah, that is, yeah. So we were really struggling, and there was a real, I knew we had to reposition the label. And then I got a call from someone I knew, and he was like, I know Zeb Bias, and, he's not sure, he's got some good tunes, but he doesn't know who to give them to. Like, would you be interested in it? It might seem a bit weird. And I'm like, no, I really want to do it. And then Dave Zeb Bias called me up and said, look, I've got these music. Are you up for hearing it? I went up to Manchester, like, look, I really want to. He had some amazing music. And I said, look, you can't sign this, but would you be up for doing this? We did eventually end up signing that other stuff because we did work well. But when we signed Zeb Bias, when I was approaching people and the demos coming through were really different. So that was that first time realising how you have to, there is an element to last so long, you've got to reposition yourself. But it's not chasing trends. It's more just understanding, look, what has momentum, what are the new things coming in, and I think if you don't do it, I always look at the Sugar Hill label that they turned down Run DMC because they were thinking, well, this is a drum machine and a guitar, but hip hop and rap, we says, well, we have the full band playing, and it's like they're not understanding, oh, this is now the next generation of and then they miss out on signing and being part of that thing. So I think that's what I've always realised. I'm never trying to chase something because I think you always go wrong if you're feeling like, well, the kids are loving this, let me pretend I'm that. It's like, it doesn't work. For me, what we've seen over the years is, if we signed Quantic when he was 20, signing a young artist and developing them, that's what you need to do. And there's a world, a music world that you're in. If you're signing someone who's like, their references just might be not my references, they might be a younger, they'll be Subtract or K-Tronada, and they'll call Quantic old school, but they love Quantic. But they know Quantic's music though, so it's that. If you're 20, I mean, the first time we signed Hemi, who was in his early 20s, I was used to people, I know, where did you first hear from us? And they're like, you played in Manchester, and then I heard Gilles Peterson playing. He said, "Oh, my dad's got your records in his collection," and I was like, "Oh, right."
That's cool, man. That's amazing. Yeah. So you signed Quantic when he was 20.
He was 20. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
wow.
I mean, I didn't realise he was so young. I was talking to him about music, and we were in touch for maybe few months chatting. We did the deal and everything, and I remember pretty soon after we signed him, I was like, "Oh, how old are you, Will?" And then when he told me he's 20, I was like, "Oh, right," because also he was talking about music. I was referencing music, which is relatively knowledgeable. I was in my late 20s then, but he was keeping up with that and then telling me more. "Oh, have you heard that?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I haven't heard that. What's that?" And it's like, "Okay, wow, you very knowledgeable about music." And then I remember saying to Paul, I think then I realised this is that special talent. This is the person who's like, the label can be built on this. Bonobo had gone to Ninja Tune by then, but it was like, everybody was saying, "Well, what are you going to do now? Bonobo's gone." And I was like, "We've got Quantic." And they were like, "What do you mean?" And I just knew he's like a special talent. Like, you're lucky to get that one, once in a lifetime in a label. We got it in the first few years of, having a label up and running, basically. So, yeah.
And is there an element, not necessarily with Quantic, but in general with like younger artists, is there an element, like how much is nurturing them for like learning about the music industry?
That's a big part of what we do.
Playing live and stuff. Yeah. How do you go about that with your artists?
I think one of the things that we've always done with the nurturing side is to give them a creative space. But one of the lines I always say to everybody as well is like, we're not a folk label where you can just do what you want and we've got to make money. If you want our office to work for you, we've got to pay our team to work this. If you're like, "Oh, I'm not worried about," and it's not to say make a record to make money, but understanding, and it's the bit that we always say, understand how the business works, just basic levels of how the business works, because it will really help you understand what you've got to do. Be patient. You might not be able to, the album that's in your head, it might take you 3 albums to get there. I think those artists who don't understand that, they're shouting at us going, "Well, why aren't you can't trust me then? Why don't you want to give me £10,000 to record some strings?" And we're like, "But your last album's only generated £2,000. Why are we?" And those artists get so frustrated. But I think those artists, when they begin to understand, look, you can make it, there's a longer journey that you can have here. And we always say, look, historically, how many multi-albums we've done with artists. And in a lot of those occasions, we put out, Bonobo did well, that was the first one, but Quantic's first album sold okay, but nowhere near what Bonobo did, not even remotely close to what Bonobo did. But we were like, this artist is special, we've got to keep doing this, we've got to keep following it. So I think that's the bit, there's an element of nurturing, but I think with artists, it's giving them that space to be creative, which I think we can be good at. If they need too much creativity from us, I always say, I'm not the executive producer of your album. You're the producer. That's got to come with you. But it's having those conversations. Look, I want to get strings on 3 tracks and it's going to cost X amount of money. I don't think we can afford to do that. You might have to wait till literally a conversation we had with Quantic. It's like, this might need to wait. Or it's like, look, can we give you budget to do 1 and let's just see how it goes? Let's just do that. How do you work? What will you learn by doing that? And Will was always good at that. Okay, I'll take that to do this. I'll take that, and then it means I can do that. And then he's learning and he's learning and he's learning. And he was brilliant in that sense as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, man. It makes... to spend that much money on strings when strings is people as well, isn't it? Strings is people playing instruments, so they're gonna need to be in an optimal position as well on the day and all that kind of stuff. And how does it work? Again, another stupid question alert. Like, how does it work with like signing an artist in general? I mean, you don't need to go into like numbers specifically, but like what sort of like deals like do you offer people, and how does it work kind of behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, we've always worked the same way. What before I started the label, because I used to do my club nights and used to book so many DJs who ran labels, I was actually able to speak to a lot of people. So by the time Tru Thoughts started, there were two people I spoke to. There was Mark Ray at Grand Central Records and Sav, who ran Euphonic Records, which had Phase Action on there. Now, Grand Central had done really well, and I said to, it was going through, I think at that point, a bit of a tougher time, and I said to Mark, what's going on? And he said, oh, well, one of these artists we didn't sign the publishing for, it sold really well, but if we had that publishing income, we would be able to carry on financing what we're doing, but because we don't do it. And his view, which I do agree with, is, well, as Grand Central as a brand, we put this record out. It's done really well. The publishing income is almost by default. It's making it because it sold 100,000 copies, that album, and then people, oh, I really like this. Can we use it on an advert or on a TV? And then half of that money is like, oh, we're not getting any of that. And then Sav at Euphonic had said the same thing to me about that. And when I was asking for advice, I said, just make sure you sign the publishing. So we always sign the recording and publishing of just the music we release. So it's not we're signing a full-on publishing deal with anybody. It's just the music we release. So on the sync side, if we put out a Weird and Wonderful record, which we have done recently, and Apple call up and say, we want to use this for one day. And they gave an unbelievable amount of money for the use of a record, for the song for one day. It cleared the advance and the debt that record was in, because obviously streaming numbers aren't great, but it took a bit of money to record that, and that paid for it. So we all benefited from that, basically. So I think that's one of the things that we learn from doing that, is to try and do that. Often with some of the artists that we work with, we end up, look, I'm featuring on this record there, you've got my catalog, you might as well just publish this and do it. So we end up doing like that. But I think that's probably the business template that we found works. So we're signing, and then we do, I'll say we do sort of 50-50 profit splits on recording, basically. But we don't charge any of our office staff team to the artist, basically. So yeah, that's it. And then we figure out what is an advance, which is recouped against the artist share. And we're always saying to artists, an advance, it sounds nice, and I got 100k advance. It's really a loan. Often if you're getting a 100k loan, it's only being recouped from your share. And then we're saying to that, if you get a big amount of money, we might have to just recoup it from your royalties. So this might be, if the record makes £5,000, 2,500 of that is yours, 2,500 of that. But if we've given you a £5,000 advance, you'll get a minus 2,500. And once that happened, there was a point where one artist was asking for an advance, which I don't think they particularly needed, but they felt that shows that you value me. Another artist was like, I don't really need that. They understood it's a loan. They both ended up getting their royalties at the same time, and one got a royalty statement off about, I mentioned 2.5 because it was about 2.5, and he called me up that morning, Rob, it's amazing, I've made $2,500 from my album. It's like, yeah, it's good. I said, look, it's brilliant, isn't it? Well done. We had a really lovely conversation. He was so pleased. And then later on the day, this other guy, I thought I'd be in a positive, I've got minus $2,500 on my, and then I was like, oh yeah, but you took the advance, that was the money but look at, you have made it has cleared some up, and surely by the next accounting statement, you'll have cleared. One artist had thought they'd failed, and one artist thought they'd done really well.
It's funny, isn't it?
And that was a massive reality. I tell this story to, probably many artists have heard this story that we're trying to sign. It's like this psychological impact of that type of stuff is like, we're saying, even today, do you need this money? What do you need it for? Break it down to us. Let us know. Is there another way we can do it? Because if it's all getting recouped from your royalties, it's like, what's the point? Why ask for it if you don't need it? So,
yeah, man, really valuable lesson. Thanks for thanks for sharing that. Like, I used to work at Loop Masters many years ago, and there's a similar story, because for the bigger artists, they do pay like recoupable advances. And I remember working with one particular vocalist, and she had an advance of, I don't know, it was like $1,000 or something. And she, like, after 6 months, she was like, I'm not making any money on this sample pack. I was like, oh, yeah, you have a recoupable advance. She's like, well, why am I getting any money? Well, we haven't got £1,000 back yet. When we get that back, then we can start paying out the royalties.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think... I completely appreciate how that is. And for you as a label, you've got staff to pay. You've also got a publishing wing. Is that right?
Yeah, so publishing is a big part of what we do. I think it makes a big impact in that side of things. So, yeah.
And there was a sync advert you had for BT.
Yes. That was Bonobo, yeah.
Was it?
And that was the early days of the label, yeah. And again, that was... So I mentioned earlier with... advice about sign the recording and publishing. So when that advert came in for the Bonobo track, and back then, sync money was pretty good basically as well. So you got a big advance, and then you obviously got the royalties as it was played on TV. It was a slightly different era of adverts and money in the music industry. And then I remember, that really sort of settled the label financially quite a bit when we got that. The other thing it did for me personally is my mum used to work at BT, and I've said she's South Asian mum. She had no idea when I was like, I'm finished uni. What are you doing? Are you going to go and get a job? And I'm like, I'm going to try and set up a record label. I'm doing my club nights. And she's like, she just didn't make sense to her. And then when I said, like, we're doing this label, and then when Bonobo started doing well, she's going, but I don't understand what's going on. What are you talking about? I said, well, I was trying to explain, if it gets played on Radio 1, we get £50. And it was not that we will play it on the playlist, but, if they use it in the background on TV, on ITV and BBC, we get like £30 or £40. She's going, but that doesn't sound a lot. Then we got the BT advert. And then I explained to my mum, now, because she was seeing it all the time. I said, every time that's played on ITV in between a huge programme, we get paid for that. And then my mum suddenly understood, oh, okay. And then I told her the numbers, and she was like, all right.
Yeah, it is a great, a great income stream, I think there's one example where Aphex Twin, I think his one in like the late 90s, I think HSBC, he had like a banking advert that he did a sync license for, and it must have been like eye-watering sums of money.
I think 90s was weird. I think that with the bit that I got conned on was that it was still pretty good money. 2000s was still very, you look in hindsight, it was still really good. And there are odd bits that go into, look, I mentioned that Apple thing with the 1 day sync that we've got. It was like, I don't even want to say the number, but for 1 day, it's unbelievable, really. you know. So
well, great. I mean, the fact that you're so well established and you're so well renowned as a label, it's kind of no surprise that a company like Apple wants to align with what you're doing. You also talked about like back catalogue being important for labels as well, like having that to keep money flowing in as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing. All the artists, even in the early days, look, me included, weren't super knowledgeable about the business of the music industry. So with Bonobo and Quantic, when I said, look, this is the term that I want to do, they really questioned, well, why is it so long? Everybody you speak to says it should just be 5 years or 10 years. And I was like, and that was another thing that other labels that I'd spoken to, that when they were saying, we did 5 or 10 year deals, and then we get this record to this level, and the bit where it can really, passively generate income and allow us to function as a label without panicking. Obviously, the artist, the deal's over. I'm going to take 100% of it. Why am I going to keep it with you? The deal's done. And I explained, I literally said it, so I gave them the examples of the people I'd spoken to and what had happened, and said, look, this is what goes on. And I was very honest. So I said, look, I'm academically, I'm quite clever. I got assisted play scholarship to a private school because, I was from a poor background, but academically very good. I said, at that point, I had a friend who I'd gone to school with who'd retired, pretty much. I said, all my friends earn much more money than me that I went to school with. The people at uni who've graduated are earning much more money than I'm doing. I said, I've got to earn money from this. I can't do. And I said, I don't want to do this for 5 or 10 years. And I said it to them. I said, what I'm hoping in 25 years, I'll be saying to you, oh, look, can we carry on putting out the music? And obviously, there are conversations going on now as we speak with Bonobo, whether we carry on doing it or not, I don't know whether that will happen, but we're in a position that it's not the end of the world if it doesn't, but we're also, look, I got to that point, it's the long-term game, and I absolutely understand, look, if it's a tiny label and they go defunct after 5 years and you've made this huge tune and someone is literally doing nothing and taking a big chunk of that, of course that's frustrating. That's absolutely frustrating. I would understand as an artist why you would be frustrated if that happened, but I guess I set out a vision and hopefully we stuck with it, and it feels like that. So yeah,
and your artists clearly sort of love what you're doing and they want to be part of it.
Yeah, I hope so. I feel that. I think, it feels like that with me. So yeah.
And what artists would you like to sort of shine a light on that are on your label that perhaps people haven't heard of or may Possibly. Not be familiar with?
I mean, right now I'm trying to think. Yeah, we've got Ebby Soda, who are they're a sort of 4-piece. I'm going to call it punk jazz because when you see them live, it's like free jazz, but it goes dubby as well and a little bit noisy. It's like wonderful chaos if you watch them live, but it's real musicality, people who are really into playing their instruments, but also about wanting to make noise within that as well. And their influences are, UK garage and light jazz, you could almost say, it's so wide, and and they're brilliant live as well. And it's interesting. They found, they've got their little own space. Their records do. We still press up vinyl, cassette, and CDs for them, basically, because they've got this fan base and this audience who love their stuff. Who else? Oh gosh, there's always so much going on. My mind's going a bit blank at the moment. Trying to think. Wheel Up is another artist that I'm really enjoying. I'm sort of, my headspace is with the people that we're trying to sign. I'm always in the bit of like, this is a really good artist and that we're trying to sign at the moment. And they're all the things, I can't even say that at the moment on here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Tara Lily is probably another interesting artist, actually. Yeah, she's one that I really like. And she's just done a track with King Cruel. Yeah, and she's just in her own lane, there's a jazz influence, there's a songwriting influence, there's a noise influence with what she does. So yeah, she's a fascinating artist as well.
It would be good to ask you about sample clearance actually, because obviously that is part of the culture of making music. How does that work when you've got an artist who has a sample that they've used in a track? What's the process of getting it cleared?
I think in the early days, we probably, like most labels would do, we'd just bury our heads in the sand and hopefully nothing will happen. Then, having been caught a few times, the process now, nowadays the process for us is quite simple. If an artist is sampling somebody, we always say, who is it? What's going, how big is it? And then we're very realistic. Look, this is going to be a problem. I know it's obscure, but Universal own it. They probably don't know they own it, but you look on Spotify, they own it. And if this does well, they'll come and say, we own 100% of this song. We won't get any money, you won't get any money.
Yeah.
Are you willing, do you want to go down that route? That's usually enough for artists. Yeah, how much do you need that little section in there? Or can you do something that riffs on that's not that? That often is the bit that is there. And then sometimes, which we've had, cool, we know that label or know off that label, we can try and clear it. And then what we say to them, once we try and clear it, there's no going back. If you approach a label and they say, we want £5,000 advance for it, there's no negotiation, it has to be 5,000, and that's too much, then that's the end of that song.
Why is there no negotiation?
No, if they say that.
Oh, if they say that. Okay,
so what we're getting the artist to understand, we don't know what they're going to say sometimes.
Okay, yeah.
And then you can't go to, I'm just going to do a reversion of it. It's like, well, no, you've told them this is the sample. If you do a reversion of it, they're saying you can go. They've got proof that you've based this on their song now, so you can't do that. So you've got to understand. But what we find, for the most part, we sort of know those people who you can approach, and they're going to be all right. They'll understand what's going on, and sometimes, I mean, it's interesting, particularly in the indie label scene. Sometimes people have catalogue and they go, look, this catalogue, you're just going to have to give X amount if you want to clear it, because this is all that we're repping for a family. They don't really understand the music industry, and they've said this is the thing. Sometimes people be like, oh yeah, we can just make it work on points. I'm not worried about, we know you're going to account to us and all of that. So it's there. I think nowadays, for the most part, we try not to, unless someone's got a good relationship with people already, pre-sample clearance, pre-doing the song, it's like, look, it's almost best not to do that. And I think what we learned it the hard way. We had I might as well say, because we got caught out with it. There was an artist called Belle Rouge. They had a track called Minor Swing, which used the riff off a huge track called Minor Swing, which I didn't realise was a huge track called Minor Swing. And the record started doing really well. We were getting approached by a couple of people approached us for adverts for it, and then we went to the artist. We always used to say, are there any samples? Oh, there's no samples, it's all right. And then we're like, there's definitely not based on anything. And they were like, oh, no, this is based on that song Minor Swing. And the lyrics were totally different. There was a whole song of that. Minor Swing isn't mentioned in the song. They just called it after the riff they took. Right. And then we were like, oh, okay, we're not going to be able to clear this. We said to them, look, we can go to the publisher and clear this as a cover version, that the publisher will take 100% off it, or we might be able to negotiate with the publisher. The original lyrics on there, you get 50%, they get 50%. So there might be a chance we can do that. And they're like, no, just leave it, just turn down the advert, we'll see what goes on. And then we could see the record becoming more and more popular. We kept saying to them, look, I think we should either rework this. We can't pull the track because it's too big now. It's one of you do loads of live gigs, it's the tune, people come and see you for. We paid for reversionings. Well, we don't like it. Fair enough. And then the publisher got in touch with us, and they were like, hey, we love Tru Thoughts. We're a big fan of the label. We love Quantic, Bonobo. I'm a big fan. You know, the Minor Swing thing, what's going on with that? And we were like, yeah, hands up, really sorry. Can we negotiate something? And they're like, if you'd approached us, we would have done something. But because you didn't, we're going to take 100%. Yeah. So that story is, I can tell that to everybody. It's like, it's what you need to do. You need to go to people before. And we've been sampled as well. So it's worse. If we notice something, look, what's going on? There's a load of money being made on this. How come you haven't approached us? We are thinking, you should have approached us about this. Yeah, and you automatically think like that. Whereas if somebody come to us and said, look, I just did this for a bit of fun, and now it's got 10 million plays on Spotify, what shall I do? And we've had this with somebody who sampled Flowdan, and actually somebody pointed it out to us, and we looked on it and it was like 8 million plays or something like that. And then we went to them and he was like, I'm just so worried about this. I didn't even know what to do. He goes, I haven't collected any of the money at all from the distributor because he didn't want to collect the money.
Oh no. His biggest tune ever.
So yeah, I think that's how we see it, and we're on the other side. So we get sampled nowadays as well. So we try and balance it in the right way, basically.
Yeah. And do you keep tabs on that? Is there any way to keep tabs on that, or is it just kind of word of mouth?
It's word of mouth. I think what often happens, which we've always seen, you begin to see. If something's uncleared and there's a buzz about it, you definitely, and it's the usual thing in the music industry. Look, the reality is of course every record label in the world is meant to be enforcing their copyright. Universal should be prosecuting all the illegal bootlegs and edits that are on Soundcloud and Bandcamp, but of course they're not going to do it because they know if that becomes a hit record, oh yeah, this is our record. Right, here's $2,000 and we're going to make 6 figures on it as well. So I think in a way what we always see, if we begin to see something going on and okay, that's beginning to make money, and then what we do, which we had one of the reggae labels did when they were getting sampled a lot, if they approach people and they didn't reply back, they just go and register that song as 100%. So occasionally when we've seen things and we've tried to get in touch with people and they're not getting in touch, we go on to the PRS and PPL and we're like, this song is our song, they bootlegged us, and just make sure that, if any further money comes in, it just comes our way as well. But I think for the most part, away from major labels, I think major labels are so big at the moment, they have to set a template, which is annoying, that if you sample a record from a major label, even if it's something that has never done any business before, we've got to charge you $10,000 for you to do it. There isn't a system in place at majors to do that. And I think we've tried clearing things, literally tried at majors to clear things. And it's like, you're speaking to lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and lawyers. And it's like, well, what's the advance? What's the advance? It's like, it's taken you 4 months to realise you definitely own this, because we're saying you do own it. No, we don't. We've looked up. You do own this. You do own this. And it's like, this is crazy. And now you want $10,000 for it. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. And we're trying to explain, look, if we put this out, it could, but obviously they're thinking, well, we've got Coldplay. I don't care. They don't care, So, and I guess that's what we understand, and we've got to get artists to understand that's the world of sampling, where if it's making money and it's a major, they'll come and grab it all from you if you're not careful. But sometimes you just have to accept that and be like, yeah, that's it. It's the way it is. So
yeah. I mean, I did interview Fatboy Slim a couple of years ago, and he even said to me, like, there's still a few samples no one knows about in there. And also, I think he did. I think he sampled The Clash without their permission. Yeah,
well, he played it, did he, on Beats International, isn't it? He played the bass line is Guns of Brixton, isn't it?
Right, and then that was without clearance. Yeah. And then he was like, can you just stop recording for a second and I'll explain to you what happened. So, like, he told me what happened. I was like, mate, wow, okay, I will not tell anyone what happened then.
Well, but even with Fatboy Slim, the song that he remixed, I did with my friend who tried to teach me how to use the Akai, which I mentioned earlier, and then when Norman did his Groove Armada remix, he sampled the drums of a solo record that I'd put out pre-Tru Thoughts that my friend had done. And then my friend said to me, Norman, I heard on Radio 1 driving back from work.
I See You Baby.
Yeah. There's a little riff of these drums just at the beginning, and it's from his thing sped up that he'd programmed. Like he hadn't looped it, he'd programmed. And I said to him, Norman's giving us a free Fatboy Slim remix. What do you want me to do? I said, it's like, I can't go to him and go give you some money for it. And I think that's the world you've just got to accept you're in. You're either in this world or you're militant about it and you're out of this world, which of course some artists are. They don't want their music sampled. They'd rather it be removed than make any penny from it. So yeah,
and I think in a lot of instances it does elevate. If the sample gets cleared and it goes in a track, then it can elevate it and you can open up to a new audience. And I think that's exactly what's happened with there's a Pink Pantheress song that she put out recently which samples Underworld.
Oh right,
and
okay.
She, clearly it was like all above board and it was done. But I just feel like there's probably quite a few sort of teenagers who are into her music who've like discovered Underworld through that. And I think when Underworld did their Boiler Room recently, they played like a bit of her vocal on their track, and it's kind of cool. Yeah, they kind of used it in a really positive way.
Yeah, and I love sampling. When we did Quantic, when he did a song called Pushing On. And when he sent it to me, it's Alice Russell singing on it. It was one of the first lyrical songs that Quantic wrote, and Alice's performance on it was amazing. And I said to him, we've got to put the a cappella out this because I called it a pension. I said the same to Flowdan. These can be your pension funds. And I called it that because, and he was like, no, I worked so hard on this. I said, please, we've got to put the a cappella out this. And then, years later, we cleared it for this house tune, and then Defected Records ended up signing it through Ministry, and they were like, yeah, we're going to try and get this into the charts. And then we were really excited, and there was a massive buzz about it, Oliver Dollar, and it went in at number 3 in the charts. Wow. We're like, amazing. Then we emailed them, I'm like, okay, that's brilliant. And then they were like, no, we thought it was going to go to number 1. So as far as we're concerned, it's been a failure.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, you were really realising, they didn't quite phrase it in failure, but you were realising, oh, that's it. They were expecting a number 1, and because they didn't feel at that moment you could push it to get to number 1, but the charts are all different now. You have to make that impact, and then they use that impact to then take it up to another level. And it was almost like, yeah, we don't think this is going to get to number 1 now, so that's why we signed it. So we have to move on to the next thing. So this was a real understanding of, oh, this is the way at that level and how things work, which is fascinating, which I really liked and I like to do. But it's not the world that I'm in. You know, I'm still really happy that went in the number 3 or 5. Amazing. I think it went in. Yeah. You know?
And I think as someone who DJs, like, always finding an a cappella is like the funnest thing ever.
Yeah.
Because you'll just find another tune that you just go, oh, that a cappella record I've got will go really well with this.
Yeah.
And there's something so satisfying, even on that level. It's like, it's great to put out a cappellas, I think.
Yeah. And we've seen that with Flowdan, because not too much convincing, but took a little convincing with him. Look, we need to get your a cappellas out. I said the same thing as Pension Fund. And he was like, okay, I'll trust you. And then he had a record with this new generation UK garage producer, Sammy Vergy, sampled it, and then it ended up, I think it was Polydor came out officially, like we cleared it, and it became, it's huge. Like the younger generation now know this Flowdan tune called Shelliverse, and I played an edit of it at Love Supreme, and you could see all the kids singing along to it, and I was like, oh, they don't know this version that I play, but they know the other version. And I love, I love that. Oh, this song is now taken its own space now. It's all in, but it was the song that we initially, and I think that's what I always feel with the music that we're doing. We're meant to be this superstar DJ may sample our record, or a record may take a life of its own because a club DJ or a pop person wants to do it. And even with that pushing on, there's a cover version of it that got signed, gets synced to so many super mainstream things, Traitors, and the thing with, what was the thing that got complained with the Black Lives Matter dance, that mainstream? I forgot, Britain's Got Talent type thing, and then they did the dance for Black Lives Matter, which had one of the most complained programs ever, but it's a cover version of Pushing On as part of the clips there, because the lyrics are about moving forward, and it was like, that song wasn't written, it was a funk tune, deep funk tune that he wrote with a deep funk record, but the songs now become something else. So
amazing, man. Yeah, who knows where they go to. You're someone who's like not afraid to speak out about sort of marginalized communities. You mentioned Black Lives Matter there. How much does your outlook, how much of your outlook are you able to share with Tru Thoughts and what you're putting out with Tru Thoughts?
I think probably one of the biggest things that happened is, I guess, for me personally, my personality is I'm going to speak up about anything that I feel is going on in the world, and I'm not concerned about doing that. I think when Black Lives Matter happened, that felt it was a good thing for the music industry to face up to, and I felt that was a really important sort of jump off point that gave lots of people a chance to speak up. And I think even with everything going on with Palestine at the moment, there is this balance about how much should artists speak or labels speak and what's going on. And we've had people approach us as, how come you're not speaking about this, and how come you're doing that? I think what we've understood as a label is at Tru Thoughts, and particularly social media, it's like Tru Thoughts is, our social media is there to, when Black Lives Matter thing was going on, we were very vocal about it. We actually didn't put the black square up because we feel we had spoken already about the situation. We felt certain people needed to put that black square up, but we we could improve, but we weren't one of those people because it was started by two black women who worked at Atlantic Records, which is funded by a huge Trump supporter. So yeah, they have to get Atlantic to put up a black square. That's really, really important for them. And there were lots of indie people who were the same. We're not putting up a black square because it's performative for where we're at. We've just got to do some real things to do it. So that's what we felt at the time. And I guess even the same with what's going on in Palestine at the moment. There can be pressure to post up on the Tru Thoughts socials. I'm vocal in my own opinion about it, and I've had people, because I've expressed concerns about anti-Semitism, going, well, you don't care about Palestine? I'm like, I care about Palestine. And then I post something about Palestine. Well, what about October 7th? You almost can't win.
Yes.
But my view personally is you just speak up about these things. And my other view is I get concerned sometimes where articulate artists are putting pressure on every artist to speak up, because I know every single artist I speak to and have been affected by what's went on with the riots last year, the flags recently, Palestine, Black Lives Matter, like really affected. Some post up on social media about it and some don't, because some are more comfortable about doing it and some aren't. And I think this expectation for artists and in general, or a record label in general, to be the all singing, all dancing spokesman for every important cause, you just can't do it. And for me, I post a lot of the stuff up on my own social media. Some of it gets crossed over with the Tru Thoughts social media, but I know if it's coming from me, if somebody comes up with something, so if we get a comment about me talking about something political on the radio show, I'll reply to it. I'm happy to reply to someone who enjoys the radio show and is a bit concerned about, oh, why are you saying that? And I can really explain, which I think is a way that, look, hopefully you'll understand me. You will still be able to listen to the show, because we might not be agreeing on this micro point or a big point, but there's probably 99 big points we agree on. Maybe we've just got to agree to disagree. Your view on this is different to mine. That's all it is. Or, look, I understand you might not want to listen to the radio show ever again or buy another record from Tru Thoughts ever again. But I don't think any of our artists would expect me not to speak up about things that I believe in, because I'm not saying it as Tru Thoughts. I'm saying it as my Rob Louis. It's me speaking up. And I think I've always been like that. We had a meeting in a big major label, and there was a white artist on that major label signed at the time who said some stuff that was, I would class as racist, and there was a thing going on, is it racist, is it not? We went for a totally separate meeting, but the head of that company who deals with them came and said hello and sat on the meeting, and then started talking about that artist, and was all right with saying what was going on, and then played it down a little bit. And I confronted him about that. I said, no, that stuff he said's racist, And I explained why in an articulate way. And he explained, yeah, in a way, what was going on. And then I said what I thought. We didn't fight. It was all pleasant. And then he said, oh, cool, nice to meet you, and went off. And then I said to the people that were there, I hope that isn't awkward for you, but I have to speak up. And they were like, I'm glad you spoke up. We were a bit too scared to speak up because he's the boss. So I think that's what I've realized. And I said to Paul afterwards, is that right? Paul, my business partner, he's like, look, you always good. He knows me. I'm not coming in guns blazing. I'm not, SW1's public enemy. I'm going to just talk. I'm a, South Asian kid. I'm not a fighter in physical fight in that sense. I'm going to speak. But not everybody can do that. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm great and super articulate, but I'll always try and express. And sometimes I'm clumsy. Sometimes I'll post something up and I'll come in at the end of the day and my wife will say to me, oh, Rob, you phrased that, that wasn't great the way you phrased that. So you can see why somebody's come and said that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. But I said, look, if anybody who's following me on social media they know the bigger picture of what I'm doing, they know I'm just like, yeah, the flags have pissed me off today because the Sussex Patriots are racist and people are saying, don't be worried about these flags going up, and it's annoying me.
Yeah.
That's going on. So
yeah, it's really, yeah. I mean, it's great that you do that, man. It's great that you do speak out, and having that dialogue is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being open to the discussion.
Yeah. And not fight people. I think that's the bit, and trying to change people's minds sometimes if you can, but not all the time. Sometimes you can't change people's mind.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's irrational, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, when you get to the heart of it, you realise that this is like an irrational hatred, and it's connected to something that we can't talk about and resolve within 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like therapy will probably help you in this situation. But it's so important to do that, man. And I think that is amazing. It's amazing that you do that, and it's so important for your artists, for you as a label, but for the wider community as well.
And one of the things that really is important, why I try and do that, is because, again, when I was at school and I got really into Public Enemy, there were some kids in my school who began to get into Public Enemy. And this was the 80s, where the levels of you'd look back now and say it was racism that people could do in an acceptable way but wasn't correct. And there were some kids in my year who were a bit like that. They were okay with me but would sometimes make comments that I didn't like, but it was the least of my worries at that moment in time as where I was, but it did annoy me. And I remember them going to see Public Enemy live, and the next day they came back, they were coming up to me, talking to me, and the rest of my school years with those people, that going to see Public Enemy had literally changed their perception of what they should be saying and talking. Whatever had gone on, whatever Public Enemy had said at that point, they came with a just whole different view. And to me, that bit about, I love two-tone when I was very young and I saw that going on, and I was worried about getting the bus, but I saw two-tone, they're mixing up, they were beginning to explain that don't be scared of skinheads. Skinheads shouldn't be racist. They're an idiot if they're racist. I didn't know that. I used to be scared of skinheads, and then realised, oh, no, they like black music, and they're thick if they I don't like black people or brown people. So yeah, the way music can help communicate with people, it gives an inroad, doesn't it, to do, and I think that's an important part of music, isn't it? So
definitely, man, definitely. And just talking about, you mentioned Stuart Lee earlier, and I grew up in a very white area, Shropshire, in just on the Welsh border, and Stuart Lee came to do a show there, and he said, "Wow, this is crazy. It's like a Nazi Butlins." That's how white the area I'm from is. Yeah, and that was like the opening line to his show. But it's true. It is true. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I love Brighton. I love the multicultural sides here.
And everyone's very vocal, aren't they, because of the LGBTQ community as well. There's just another level of things that goes on down here, aren't they, that's very different. So, yeah, and
people are so much more open to, wild things. You can do something crazy, walk down the street, and no one batters an eyelid. And it's brilliant for that, It's brilliant for that. But yeah, people stand up for what they believe in as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, maybe just a couple of thoughts on where people would like to check out Tru Thoughts, and what you've got perhaps coming up that people might be able to check out.
Yeah, so the website is the best place, the Tru Thoughts website. I guess, I'm not sure if it's old-fashioned or not, but it means Elon Musk and all those horrible people don't get paid. If you can be proactive enough, please come there. And it's got all the information. There's easy access to listen to music, there's access to the radio show there. We do these compilations every year, which is a roundup of the year. So that's coming up, the 2020 Tru Thoughts 2025. And if you don't know much about the label, they're a really good starting point, because we put a song from each of the artists that year who we've released on the label. So if you like anything, it's like, maybe go and check their album, because it's very eclectic, the label. Probably I'm the only person, I think, who loves every record we put out on Tru Thought. I don't expect everybody to be like that, but that's probably the website. But we are saying all of that. We're on the socials, that they're there. That it is an important way to communicate, and give the follow there. We're there. So, and I've got my own website, Robert Louis. You can message me direct through there. I can't reply to everybody, but I love it if people recommend me music and saying, "Oh, have you heard this tune?" I'm always checking, recommendations and things like that. So yeah,
excellent, man. Yeah, I did just make a note to mention your website because it's so good. You've got all of your whole biographies on there. Loads of old mixes, like you did some. You've got 2 hip hop mixes. You did, what was it, 79 to 89 DJ mix, and you've listed all the tracks for people, 90 to 1990, hip hop 50 DJ mixes there on your website. Yeah, there's so much information just on your web. I mean, the Tru Thoughts website is amazing as well. It's a brilliant place. I just love that on your website you've got a section which is like restaurants that you like in Brighton and stuff.
Probably
like
needs
that.
A bit of update. I can't remember the last time I updated it, but yeah,
it's great. I just love that you're clearly someone who enjoys every little section of life, and you celebrate the things that are around you.
Yeah.
So,
and I love to celebrate Brighton. I think there's something fantastic about Brighton. Like even with what you're doing, I think this is the one thing that Brighton is really good at doing. We've got brilliant people who do some really specialist thing, but do it to a level. It's not just like, even if they've got full-time jobs and things like that, what they do it with such passion and love. And when you approached us and I was looking at what you do, it's like, oh, wow, you're serious about this. This isn't the usual, I'm thinking of doing a podcast, It's like, oh wow, you're really, you've got a fantastic resource here. So I really appreciate being asked to come and do this as well. So
oh, thank you, man. That is almost exactly what Norman Cook said was the reason that he came on my podcast, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. You can see the passion somehow. And I think it is hard also because I don't put my face on anything. Yeah. I kind of, for my own personal reasons, I don't do that. And I think, it's cool that people still enjoy it and still listen, even though I'm not like putting my thumbs up on the thumbnail and all that stuff.
And it's a reminder, we don't have to have, you can't do the hard sell all the time. I mean, we're saying that to our artists even now. It's like, don't let social media, if you're getting annoyed about social media, then don't feel pressure to be on there all the time, and present yourself in a certain way. It's like,
people love the enigma, Yeah. I always give the example of Burial, the way that he put his music out and the way that he is online. It's like, you can still be massive. You don't need to. You don't need to do that stuff.
Yeah. And I love that you're doing this and flying the flag for, I guess, the introverts amongst us all as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's been great to speak to you.
Thank you.
Oh, what a great guest. Thank you so much to Robert for coming and speaking to me there. It was really, really insightful, really laid-back chat. I'm glad he put up with my stupid questions. And it's just really great that they're running a label that's so successful in 2025. We all are aware of the challenges that streaming has put in front of us, and I love how they've diversified, how they've moved forward and evolved over the years. And he's still got the same drive, the same buzz for music. And really nice guy. Go and check out their album for 2026 and also his Unfold radio shows, which I highly recommend. I'm also going to recommend listening to the interview that I did with James Wiltshire of F9 Audio and the Freemasons a couple of years back. You must have heard of the Freemasons. They had some huge hits, Love on My Mind, Uninvited, and many, many remixes for the likes of Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, even Grammy nominations. James runs F9 Audio, and he's one of the nicest guys in the industry, and he shares so much knowledge in that interview. I really, really recommend it's worth your time. Thank you once again for listening. Remember, you can support Sonic State on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. There may be a couple more episodes before the end of the year. Let's see what happens. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you again soon.